There we go. Right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Of course, you should be having. You're wasting your time, Solly. Don't bother. Yeah, it's fine. We're just having a discussion here about what Philip should drink, but we'll put that to one side because we are talking about Shema Yisrael. Last week, was it last week? Yes, last week we spoke about Kel Melech Ne'eman. And what else did we speak about last week? The number of words, that's right. I see I haven't even had a chance to look at what we did last week because it's been a busy day today and I haven't really had very much time. However, we all know the Shema, so we're going to talk about the first paragraph of the Shema. But before we do so, David Colman asked me a very good question. We spoke last week about the machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, about how you say Shema. In other words, what position you say the Shema. Beit Shammai says that in the morning you have to say it standing up, and in the evening you have to say it lying down. Beit Hillel says you say it in whatever position you were in when you get to it. So if you were standing up, then you can stay standing up, or you can sit down. But if you sit down, if you are sitting down when you reach the Shema, then you can't stand up, because that would look like you are deliberately standing up and therefore going against the halacha of Beit Hillel and going according to Beit Shammai, which we don't do. So, B'shoch b'cha u'v'kumecha, that is what Beit Shammai used to derive their view that you lie down when you say the Shema in the evening, and you stand up when you say the Shema in the morning, because uv'shoch b'cha means when you lie down, uv'kumecha when you get up. Beit Hillel used that pasuk to tell us not how you say the Shema, but when you say the Shema. B'shoch b'cha, when you go to sleep, when you go lie down, in other words, at night time, uv'kumecha, and when you get up, i.e. during the day, i.e. twice a day. So David Colman asked me a very good question, and he said, well, we know, don't we, that you can only use a pasuk to learn one thing. You can't derive from a pasuk two limudim. So where do Beit Shammai learn the halacha that you have to say it twice a day? It can't be from uv'shoch b'cha uv'kumecha, because they use that pasuk to teach that you have to lie down at night and stand up in the morning. So David Colman asked me where they learned that out from, and I didn't know off the top of my head. So I thought about it, and I thought about it a little bit, and I still didn't know, and I should have known. So what do you do if you don't know?
Ask around.
You ask somebody, or you could Google it, yeah. I tried Googling it, didn't help. So if you don't know, you ask somebody who you think might know. So I asked my son, and no, not Bobby. I asked my son Dan, and he said to me, "What kind of a question's that? It's obvious." Well, that of course is not the answer that you want to hear. Anyway, it is obvious when he told me, and we all know it.
The rest of the day.
They learn it out in the same way as Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Where does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah learn it out from? Who was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah?
He was a Nasi Besadin.
He was a Nasi at one time. He was. Okay, say tonight. Come on, a bit more. What does the Haggadah say about Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah?
He was one of the four rabbis sitting with
Okay.
Rabbi Akiva.
Well, no, he was not. Well, it might be. Let's have a look. Let's see. That's not the bit that we need to learn it from, though. You will kick yourself when you hear this, like I did.
Our reading says, "Higi as a man shall shacharit."
Okay, yes, that's a good start. Okay, so let's go this. They were, in fact, he was, in fact, one of the rabbis that was in Bnei Brak. How about this? This will be familiar to you because you will have said, how old are you, Philip?
Me, I'll be 77 in July.
Right, so you've probably said this 73 or 4 times, at least. Probably more because you'll have had 2 Sidorim when you were younger, right? And even if you weren't paying attention for some of them, you know. Maaseh Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Tarfon.
Yeah.
Shahayu Mesubim b'Bnei Brak. They were leaning in Bnei Brak. V'hayu Mesaprim b'Tziat Mitzrayim, and they were talking about the Exodus from Egypt. Kol oto halayla, all night. Ad shaba'u talmidehem, until their pupils came along. V'amru lahem, and they said to them, Rabotenu, our rabbis, Higia Zman Kriyat Shema Shel Shacharit, like Johnny said, the time has come for saying Shacharit. Fine. Still, that doesn't tell us where Beit Shammai learns it from. The next bit does. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, Harei ani keven shivim shana. I am like a man of 70 years old. How old was he? He was 18, but he was like a man of 70 years old. The story, of course, is well known to us. He was an 18-year-old, and he was appointed temporarily the head of the Sanhedrin instead of Rabban Gamliel, and because he was so young, people didn't want to, didn't sort of take him seriously. So overnight he became grey. That's what happens when you become a leader, right? Overnight you become grey.
That's why you're becoming black again.
Yeah. So anyway, he became grey. Anyway, he says, I'm like a man of 70 years old. I never knew why we said the parasha of Shema, i.e. the Exodus from Egypt, because when do we say that? In the 3rd paragraph of Shema, right? Yeah, right at the end of the 3rd paragraph, we say we talk about Yetziat Mitzrayim. He says, I never knew Ad Shedrasha ben Zoma, until Ben Zoma came along and said the drasha. Shnema, it says in the pasuk in the Torah, Laman tizkor, in order that you should remember, et yom tzetcha me Eretz Mitzrayim, the day when you left Eretz Mitzrayim, kol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life. You have to remember it. Yemei chayecha hayamim. If it had just said yemei chayecha, that would have taught me the days. Kol yemei chayecha lehavi haleilot. The fact that it says kol yemei chayecha includes the nights. Chachamim omrim yemei chayecha ha'olam hazeh. The fact that it says yemei chayecha means in this world. Kol yemei chayecha lehavi limot haMashiach. The fact that it says kol yemei chayecha means the days of Mashiach in the next world as well. We'll still be remembering the Yetziat Mitzrayim. So Dan told me, said it's obvious. From here you learn that Ben Zoma, who held that Kol Yemei Chayecha was how you learned night and day, both night and day, he goes according to Beit Hillel, right? Because, no, he goes according to Beit Shammai. Sorry, he goes according to Beit Shammai because Beit Hillel have already learned that from our pasuk. So Beit Shammai learn it from this pasuk. So then you'll say to me, well, what will Beit Hillel do with this pasuk then? They go like the Chachamim, which say this pasuk here, Kol Yemei Chayecha, teaches us this world and the next world. So now we're completely clear. We're completely clean. We've answered David Colman's question. Beit Hillel learns night and day from Uveshoch B'chol Kumecha. Beit Shammai use that pasuk to tell you the position that you should be in when you say Shema. And they use this pasuk, Kol Yemei Chayecha, to teach you night and day. The Chachamim use this pasuk to teach you Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. So that was the answer to a very good question by David Colman, which really we all should have known the answer to that because we've read that lots and lots of times. So thank you to David Colman for giving us the question, and thank you for Dan for giving us the answer. So that was what I wanted to start with. Now,
we know we don't say it, Johnny. How do we don't say it when we go on the way, or shift secha?
Well, the Beit Shammai would say that that's exactly what you do. That he would, to be consistent, Beit Shammai would say, then, if you are on a journey, then you can carry on saying the Shema, or you should carry on saying the Shema as you're walking along. Beit Hillel would probably say you should stop and not walk on the way while you're saying it. Okay, so they're consistent. Let's have a look, therefore, at the Shema itself now. So we'll go to the Shema. It would help if we get the right page. Here we go. So we've said Shema Yisrael. We've explained the big ayin and the big dalad. We've explained that some people stress that ayin, which is difficult for us Ashkis because we don't really know how to pronounce an ayin properly, so we end up saying Shema. Okay, Ruby knows it. Yeah, Ruby. We mentioned that last week. Ruby is king of the ayins, and the dalad we stress as well. Ayin and dalad means aid, means a witness. We are witness to what? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now, I don't think that we actually discussed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we discussed actually the midrash that tells us where this pasuk was first said, because it's Shema Yisrael is first in the Torah in Dvarim, in Moshe's speech. Okay, Moshe's speech at the end of his life. That's where it actually appears in the Torah. But the midrash tells us that there was an episode with Yaakov Avinu and his children. Did we speak about this last week?
Yes. Yeah.
Did we?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just recap that because it's an important thing. On his deathbed, Yaakov gathered all his children around. Yeah, at the beginning of Parashat Vayechi, he gathered all his people around, and he says, "Gather yourselves around Bnei Yaakov, and I'll tell you what's going to happen ba'acharita yamin, at the end of days." He was going to tell the future to his children. And actually, if you look at what he did do, he didn't then tell the future. He says, "Gather around and I'll tell you the future. I'll tell you what's going to happen at the end of days." And he doesn't. What he does is just give a bracha to each of his children. Some of them he get a misha beirach as opposed to a bracha, but they all get something, right? But what he doesn't do is to tell the future. Why does he not tell the future when he said he was going to? Because Hashem, as it were, did not want him to reveal the future, and as it were, he lost the ability to have his nevuah. In other words, his nevuah, his prophecy, his ability to prophesy, left him at that moment, and he was very, very concerned. He was very, very concerned, because he thought. We did mention this last week, I remember now, but I'm saying it again because it's important. And
This
anyway,
is Baruch Shem Kavod, I think you're talking.
yeah, that's when we mentioned it. I'm going to say it again because you never remembered it anyway, so it's worth saying again. So Shema, so he said he was worried. Yaakov was worried that there's something going wrong here. Why he's lost the power of prophecy, and
I didn't think that he could.
Because he was about to do it. He knew it. He knew that prophecy. He knew that prophecy. He was going to give that prophecy to his children. And as it were, Shem decided not. That wasn't right. Prophecies. Who knows what it was going to be? But he lost his power of prophecy, and he thought. This is a midrash. He thought that the reason he lost the power of prophecy was that because one of his children around his table, around his bedside, was not fitting to receive a prophecy. In the same way as his father had a child who wasn't fitting. His father, who was that? Yitzchak had Esav as well as Yaakov. His grandfather had Yishmael as well as Yitzchak. So each of his father and his grandfather had a child who wasn't fitting to receive the bracha. Here's Yaakov on his deathbed. He's now worried that this has happened to him, and that's why the nevuah left him. Turns out that wasn't the case. That whatever reason, he wasn't meant to give out the future, but he thought it was because there was a pagam, a blemish in his children, and so he said, Shema. One version of the midrash is that the children all said together, Shema Yisrael, listen Yisrael. That was Yaakov's name. Listen, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We believe, all of us, Hashem, our God, Hashem is one. So it was their reassurance. This Shema Yisrael was their reassurance. Yisrael, not Yisrael himself, but Bnei Yisrael, the children, my children of Israel. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. If there's one of you around here that doesn't believe Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, just listen to me, Shema Yisrael. And then that version of the Midrash has the sons replying, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. We believe, blessed is the name of Hashem's glory forever and ever. So either way in the Midrash, this Shema Yisrael was either an affirmation by the children of Yaakov that they believed in Hashem, or it was an admonition by Yaakov to his children that they should believe that Hashem is one, and then they said, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto. And at that point, Yaakov realized that the reason he was not able to do this nevuah was not because there was a pagam in his children, a blemish in his children, but for whatever reason, he wasn't meant to do it. And so
I thought Yaakov said it, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto.
Depends on which version of the Midrash. There's two versions of the Midrash. One where Yaakov says Shema Yisrael and they answer Baruch Shem, and one that they say Shema Yisrael and he says Baruch Shem. The idea is the same. The end point is the same, I should say.
So was there anybody with a blemish? Or
there wasn't. No, there wasn't. And that's why there were 12 tribes, or 13 tribes if you count Yosef splitting into two. So, so that's where the Midrash tells us that this Shema Yisrael was first said. In the Torah, it comes in Dvarim, it comes in Moshe's valedictory speech. So that was Shema. And so that's why, if you go back to that Midrash, that's why the big ayin and the big dalad, which make the word aid, witness, is so fitting. Because, as it were, in that story of that Midrash, they were giving testimony, if you like. Yaakov and his children were giving testimony to this fundamental concept that we believe in, that there is one God. And there's two ways of translating this word that we didn't do last week. Shema
we talked about the big dalad, I think,
we did talk about the big dalad,
reish.
Because of yes, to make sure it's not a reish. That's right. So there's two ways of translating this. Shema Yisrael, listen Israel. Hashem Elokeinu. How do you translate that?
The Lord our God.
The Lord our God. Okay, or how do you say is in Hebrew?
Yesh.
Say the word.
Yesh.
Okay, Philip is right. You don't. There is no word for is in Hebrew. If you want to say this is a book, okay, you have to say Zeh Sefer.
Yeah.
You can't. There's no word for is. This book. Okay.
Shema Yisrael of Musaf on the family.
Yeah, that's different. That's different. So Hashem Elokeinu, those two words can be translated either as Hashem our God, or it can also mean Hashem is our God. You get that? Because there's no Hebrew word for is. So how do you know what it is? Well, it's from context. When you read Hebrew or speak Hebrew, there's no verb that helps you say is. There's no word for is. And so there are two translations. It can be
you could say who Elohim.
You can, but that's stressing a bit. Hashem Elokeinu can mean both. It can mean either Hashem our God or Hashem is our God. Now, if you take the first translation, Hashem our God, Hashem echad, God is one. Okay, that's how you translate it. Hashem Elokeinu, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is. So you're putting an is there. Where's the is there? Hashem echad. There isn't there. So in that translation, from the context, you're putting an is between the Hashem and echad.
God one.
Okay. So how do you translate it if you don't put the is in it? So you translate it like this: Hear, O Israel, Hashem our God, Hashem echad, the one and only God. So the meaning is the same, but I just wanted to point out to you that you will see different translations.
Is one.
So how does Sachs translate it?
Is one.
See, so Rabbi Sachs puts an is in both. Hashem is our God. So this is a third way of translating it. Hashem is our God, and not only is Hashem our God, Hashem is one. Okay, so that's one way of translating it. You can translate it, Hashem Elokeinu, the Lord our God is one, or you can say the Lord is our God, and He is one. So it's just an interesting grammatical thing there. Yes, Frank.
When we talk about God, Hashem and Elokeinu have different implications of the different characteristics or traits of God.
Hashem and Elokim, yes, but the problem is that what is Elokeinu? Elokeinu is the possessive form, first person plural possessive form. Our Elokim, right? There is no first person possessive for Yud K Vav K. So we are stuck.
But what I'm thinking is, if we're looking at different traits of God, we're then still finishing with saying Hashem Echad, because for the avoidance of doubt of there being two different gods because of the different traits. And therefore,
that fits in very nicely, doesn't it? With Yotze Or Uvore Choshech, Osei Shalom Uvore Et. A call in davening. What does it say in Yeshayahu? Uvore Et Hara. And they changed it. Remember, we talked about this, that they changed the word Ra because we don't want to believe that there was two gods. That's what the Persians believed, that there were two gods, one of good and one of bad. We say no. First of all, there's no such thing as bad. And if the things that we think are bad, it's still one God. So that would fit. You say Hashem is the name we, Yud Kei Vav Kei is the name we give to God in His merciful manifestation, and Elokim is the word we use for God in His justice manifestation. So what Frank wants to say is Hashem Elokeinu. Don't think for 1 minute that there's an Hashem and there's an Elokeinu, who are two different things. No, Hashem Echad, it's one. They're all one thing. That fits in very nicely, Frank, with the whole concept of this declaration of monotheism. So Frank's explanation is, if you like, an affirmation of what we said right at the beginning. And what did we say at Yotze Or Uvore Choshech? We said that is the beginning of what? They're called the Birchot Shema. They are the brachot that belong to the Shema. So that fits in very, very nicely, Frank. Very nicely indeed. Thank you for that. Right, let's go into the wording now.
What's the reason between the line between Hashem and Echad in 2 Siddim I'm looking at? Like an explanation.
Okay, well, I'm looking in the Rinat Yisrael, and it's not there.
Oh, okay.
But usually when there's a line, and you'll see that
a vertical line. Yes,
a vertical line. You'll see it in many Siddurim, in various places in davening. In Art Scroll, you've got a there are certain Siddurim that have that. Usually that is a warning sign to the reader to stop and be very careful not to run the words in together. When I was teaching my boys to lane, we used to call it traffic lights. Okay, so for example, let's have a look at for a traffic light here.
In the art school, it's got it between Shema and Israel, and between Hashem
because you,
and Elokeinu.
Shema. Okay, so if it's to stop you running letters into one another. I'll tell you where there's a good traffic light. Echad Eloheinu. What would you say? Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad. Echad Eloheinu. Gadol Adonenu. What's next? Kadosh Shemo. Right? And it's very easy to say Kadosh Shemo. Right? That's a traffic light. Yeah. Kadosh, stop. Shemo. Two shins. Yeah? That's a traffic light. Now, there's a tendency with various, that's an obvious one where you've got two letters together. But if you think about Shema Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. Each word has to be enunciated very carefully. Now, why particularly with Shema? Because there is a machloket as to whether the Shema is Dioraita, a Torah law, or Dirabanan, or it's a rabbinical law. It does appear in the Torah, but is it a Dioraita to say it twice a day, or is it a Dirabanan to say it twice a day? Now, there's a machloket, and the machloket is not just is it a Dirabanan or Dioraita, how much of it is a Dioraita? Now, we know, don't we, because we've learned this, that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who wrote the Mishnah, he held that the only Dioraita, the only Torah law compared with Shema, is the first line. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. How do we know that? Remember when we learnt about why you cover your eyes? Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi would cover his eyes when he said this pasuk in order to concentrate. It's a Gemara. The Gemara teaches us that in Brachot, and we learnt that a few weeks ago. But that's all he said. The Gemara goes on to say that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi only said that pasuk. That was his Shema. He never said V'ahavta. He never said V'haya im Shema. He never said Vayomer. Okay.
Twice a day did he say it, at least?
I assume so.
Okay.
But the point is that everybody seems to agree that Shema Yisrael is a Dioraita. Now, what other piece, let's say, not other, what piece of laning in the year does everybody agree is a Dioraita? Okay, Philip says the Aseret Adibros is a Dioraita. The answer is no. There is only one piece of laning in the entire year.
Shira.
Not the Shira.
Oh, okay.
Say again, Frank.
Zachor.
Zachor. Correct. Parshat Zachor.
Yeah.
Parshat Zachor. Why is that a Dioraita? Why is that a Torah law? What does Parshat Zachor say? Zachor Amalek. Remember that which Amalek did to you when you left Mitzrayim, and so and you will see, and we do it here. Parshat Zachor is said every single word separately. Zachor eit asher asa lecha Amalek. Only on it's only on Shabbat Zachor where we fulfill that mitzvah. You can fulfill that mitzvah by listening to it on Kitetze. You can even b'di'eved fulfill the mitzvah by listening to the laning on Purim. But lechatchila, the mitzvah, as Frank says, is Parshat Zachor. So when you lane Parshat Zachor, you'll notice that the Baal Koreh says every single word and letter and syllable clearly. There's no rushing, there's no traffic lighting, there's absolutely clear. And what we do here, in order that everybody should feel that they have fulfilled their mitzvah, is we do it in different pronunciations. We start with the pronunciation that we do here in Israel, in the Sfaradit, in the modern Hebrew pronunciation. And then we do it in Ashkenazi, Zachor Eis Asher Osol Lecha Amolek. And then sometimes we've even done it in Teimani when we've had Rav Chizki, who was actually here this morning in the first minyan. I've not seen him for ages. He's a Teimani, and if he happens to be here on Parashat Zachor, we get him to do it in Teimani. And the reason for that is that everybody should feel that they have completely fulfilled that mitzvah because it is a dioraita. Now,
Sephardi, we do it Sephardi in our shul as well. CL does it in Sephardi.
And he does it in the Sephardi Nigun as well. That's right. So we have at least 3 Parashat Zachors in our shul. We have the regular one, which Rav Yuval does, the Ashkenaz one, which I do, and the Sephardi tune, which CL does. And then sometimes we have a 4th one if Rav Chizki's here and he does a Teimani one.
Which word is emphasized? How about the Shema Israel? Is this a comma?
Yes, it's a comma. Shema, it's so just to answer your question. Soli says, so why am I telling you that about Parashat Zachor? Because Parashat Zachor is a dioraita, and therefore we say every single word carefully. Shema Yisrael, according to everybody, at least that first word, that first line is a dioraita. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who only said that, it's a dioraita. And so therefore the same applies. And therefore, why are we talking about this? Because Johnny asked about the vertical line. There's a tendency to run the words into one another. And so the way you should say Shema Yisrael correctly is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay, so there's no running to the words together. And
So
your
commas is same as a vertical?
Here we have commas. Yes, some places they have a vertical line to even emphasize it even more. Between not between every letter, but between Hashem and Echad, because you tend to run that together. So that's why that is said. Now, Baruch Shem, as we know, is said quietly because it's the kind of thing that the angels say, and anything. So, but not that. That's full of sugar. Thank you. That soda will do. Thank you.
It's good.
Yeah, soda's fine. So Baruch Shem we say quietly because we're not angels, except on Yom Kippur when we are angels or like angels. And then V'ahavta, we ought to say that out loud as well. Not necessarily shouting it out loud like Shema Yisrael, but it should be said so that you at least yourself can hear it. And that's called saying. So V'ahavta. Now, many people lane the tune for V'ahavta and V'haya im Shema and Vayomer, especially if they are saying it alone. By alone, I mean not with a minyan, because remember we spoke about the things that are davar b'kedusha, the things that have got holiness that you can only say with a minyan, which are kedusha, baruch hu, and kaddish. Thank you. I was struggling with that right there. These are things called davar b'kedusha. We only say it with a minyan. Machloket, whether these are davar b'kedusha. We paskin that you can say it alone, of course, but when you come to say, the other one is Hashem Hashem. When you come to say Hashem Hashem and you're on your own, right? First of all, one opinion is you don't say it at all. And if you're going to say it, you have to lane it. Because then when you lane it, it's as if you're learning the psukim. So that's why it's not actually in the Rinat Yisrael. Is the trop in there in the sax? Yeah. Okay. So in the sax, the trop is there for you to lane, and I'm not sure about the art scroll. I haven't got an art scroll with me, but the trop is often in there in the Sidurim to help you, because there is an opinion that you should, when you're on your own, you should lane the thing. It's not halacha. You don't have to do it.
People don't know.
Okay, you don't know it, you don't know it. But I'm just saying there is an opinion that says that that you should lane it. Now,
it is in the art scroll, Johnny.
It is in the art scroll?
Yeah, my art scroll, yeah.
Okay. So so that's just another sort of how you say it. So we're saying it sitting down, generally speaking, because we're sitting down when we come to Shema. We paskin like Beis Hillel. We cover our eyes for Shema Yisrael, like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. We say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto quietly because we're not angels. And then we lane, if we can, Ve'ahavta. And if we can't lane it, we say it at least so that we can hear it. Just scanning it with your eyes is not counted as saying it. Now, because there is an opinion that says that this is a deoraita. Okay, we know Rabbi Yehuda Nasi does not hold that this is a deoraita, but there are opinions, strong opinions, that all 3 paragraphs are deoraita. Therefore, you have to say it. Scanning it with your eyes is not counted as saying. You have to say it, and preferably say it loud enough that at least you can hear it. Now, there's a bit of a balance here, because you don't want to be saying it so loud that you disturb the guy next to you. But
If you say it very, very quietly, you still can hear it yourself.
That's
You
right.
can, even if you don't, even if you don't.
Shmoni Esrei, isn't it?
On Esther also, you should say loud enough that you can hear it, but not loud enough that you disturb anybody else. So that's how you say it. Now let's go. We've got 20 minutes left. Let's begin to talk about the content of the Shema Yisrael. We've talked about the content of the first line and the second line. The first line is the declaration of the monotheistic religion. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem is our God, or Hashem our God, Hashem Echad is one. No questions asked. And if you take Frank's point as well, don't even think about there being 2 gods. There's not. There's one. Hashem Echad. End of story. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Bo'ed. That is the response of the angels, which we are copying. And then we come into the words that Moshe said in Sefer Dvarim. And notice the grammatical makeup of the first paragraph of Shema. Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. What is the grammatical
Present tense.
No, it's a future because it's the vavahif.
Thought have would be.
No.
The personal.
Is the past, but the vav is called a vavahipuch. It changes it into the future. Ve'ahavta. Anything that begins with ve is future tense. Anything that begins with va is past tense, like vayomer is and he said. Ve'omar is and I will say. V is future, va is past. That's called the vavahipuch.
What's the present then?
Hey,
Vayomer is the past. Omar is the future.
yeah,
What's the present?
ohev, but without the vav. The vav, using the vav, is called the vavahipuch. It changes the tense. It's a biblical grammatical Hebrew, not in modern Hebrew. Okay, so the present tense is omer.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm asking you is to look at Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. Okay, specifically, all right. What about Ve'ahavta? What does that mean?
You shall love.
And you shall love. Who's it referring to when it says you, Johnny?
I think it's you personally.
Ah, you personally. In other words, what is the conjugation? That's the word I was looking for. Of Ve'ahavta. It is singular. If it was, see, in English, the word you is either singular or plural.
Yeah.
But in Hebrew, it's different. Singular and plural are different. What would it be if it was you plural? Ve'ahavtem. Okay, but it's not. It's ve'ahavta. So this whole paragraph, and it says et Hashem Elokecha, your God, singular. What would it be if it was your God plural? Elokechem. Correct. So this whole paragraph is in the singular. It's talking to one person. Ve'ahavta, and you, singular, shall love. Now, before you ask your question, we're going to go into this paragraph in more detail, but let's just flick straight away to the second paragraph. V'haya, and it will be im shamoa tishma'u.
What is the future?
If you will listen,
Talking to the plural.
plural. What would it be if it was singular? Tishma. Tishma'u is plural. Asher anochi metzaveh etchem. You, plural. So the whole of the second paragraph of the Shema is in plural. We're talking to you, plural.
It's written by different people, maybe.
What?
Yes, I know.
That's the biggest apikoros that I've even heard even you say.
Not an apikoros because I'm not.
You're not clever enough. Yeah, you're right. No. They were not written by two people. They were written by Moshe Rabbeinu at the hand of God. That's what we believe. This is in the Torah, Philip. It's in Devarim. I need to just take my blood pressure now, and Philip's just said such a thing. So V'ahavta is in the singular. The first paragraph of the Shema is, as Solly just said before, upfront and personal. This is to you, individuals. The second paragraph, when we get to it, we'll discuss it in more detail then. It's in the plural, and there's a whole different ball game going on there. Okay, but let's concentrate on the first paragraph first. I just wanted to point that out to you. What does that mean, Chana? Maybe that's goid. What does that mean? That's what Chana's written. I don't know what that means. You'll have to explain, Chana. In the meantime, we'll carry on. So, V'ahavta, and you shall love et Hashem Elokecha, your God. Now, that's a very difficult concept for me. How can you command somebody to love? Love is an emotion.
Make the effort. Make the effort.
Simulate. Solly says you can simulate. I'm
Make
not
the
interested.
effort.
Interesting. Okay.
But love is by action. Love is founded on positive action rather than being.
Okay. All right. Jeff is giving us an answer to the question. Let's just clarify the question first. My question is, and you shall love Hashem your God. And I think that's difficult because love is an emotion which you don't really choose to have.
But that's depends what type of love you're talking about.
Why are we saying
Okay.
Love as an infatuation or love at first sight is different to love which is founded on kindness and supportiveness and respect.
Okay, so what, I think I might be running out of battery here. Hang on a second, I might need to plug in. Yeah, I do need to. Can you get me an extension cable, Jonathan? Sorry to just interrupt. If I don't plug in, we'll lose the... Right, we're going to answer now. Jeff has started to answer the question. Just give me a sec while I just plug in the computer. Sorry, everybody, to interrupt, but otherwise we'll have a permanent interruption. I don't know where you're going to...
That's the problem.
plug it in, but...
Nothing there. No, there's nothing there, Jeff.
It's okay, everybody. We're plugging things in now.
Oh, God, fair enough. Oh, I know what they mean.
Everything's plugged in.
Right. Jonathan is plugging in. Okay. Right. So, so the question is, how can you? That one doesn't work, Jonathan.
No, I know that's.
So, how can you be commanded to love somebody? Love is an emotion. I'm saying love is an emotion that just comes in. You can't have a control over it. And Jeff has given us a good answer, saying there are different types of love. There's love at first sight, which is not love at all, is it? What's that? That's lust, usually, right?
It's lust. It's lust.
Lust. Love at first sight. You see somebody. How can you possibly love somebody when you first see them? What you do is you lust after them, right? Oh, that's what. No, you don't think so? Love at first sight. You see somebody across the room and you love them. What do you love about them? What do you love about them?
Okay, first impression.
So it's not love. So love at first sight is lust. Attraction. Okay. The type of love, Chana said before, love comes with fear. I would say instead of fear, maybe awe. You love somebody when you realize their value.
This is saying that you should love them and not fear them. That's
Okay. The ideal is to have both.
Don't do it out of fear of God.
We have
do it out of
Ahavat
love of God.
Hashem. We
Yeah.
have Ahavat Hashem. Thank you,
So-
Jonathan. We've got power.
Thank you.
We have Ahavat Hashem, we have love of Hashem, and we have Yirat Shamayim, we have the fear, the awe of heaven. So they come together. Tana is right, they come together. So the love that we're talking about here is not the infatuative type, it's not the lustful type.
What emotion did Bnei Israel have when they went to Horeb and they were around the mountain and everything?
Awe, that's right.
That is love.
That is love, correct. That's what Hannah wrote on here. Solly is saying the same as what Hannah wrote on the chat there. And that is that when you are in awe of somebody or something or some concept, then that is a type of love as well. So
it's coercion in a way.
okay, we're talking semantics, of course, but it's important because the word love.
You can't feel that when you're in
The word love in English is a word which is a bit multifaceted, as we've now described, haven't we? What's the root of the word ahava in Hebrew? What's the root of the word? Yes, what's the root? What's the root letters?
Of hey bet.
The aleph. Hey bet is the root. Have. What does have mean? Give. So the root of loving in the Hebrew language is the same word as give. Okay. Hava, come. Hava nagila. Let us celebrate. Come. Let us give. So, yeah, we're coming to that, Hannah. We're coming to that. We're not got to b'chol lavav v'chol nafshecha v'chol modecha yet, but we're getting there. So
If you don't love Hashem, why are you saying it in the first place? You must love Hashem to say it. Why would we not?
well, okay, but this was remember, Jonathan. This was Moshe speaking to the Bnei Israel before he leaves them. He's about to die, and he says, "This is a commandment. You have to love Hashem." And my original question was, how can you say to somebody you have to love Hashem? Well, the way you love Hashem is to recognize that this love is a giving process. I've said this many times before. I love my wife because she makes nice food. No, I love myself if I say that, because, right, I like the food. I love her. I love her because she does something for me. No, that's not right. I love my wife, therefore I will make her nice food. I want to give that. So Frank's shaking his head. He's not happy. Why aren't you happy, Frank?
Throughout the Torah, we have this the letter Vav, which is connecting Pesukim, it's bringing things forward, in which we perhaps loosely or used to translate as and all the way through. And I'm wondering actually if we're saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad V'ahavta, and if you look at the Vav here, and rather translate as and, you say if, because if you accept the first statement, Shema Yisrael, then automatically, if you've got to that stage, then automatically you're going to love God with all your heart in the future.
I don't think you need to translate it as if. I think the idea still works if you translate it as and. I'll tell you why.
But I think they're linked.
Let's translate it like this. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, and brackets. As a result of that, you will love Hashem. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not so much a command. It's not a commandment, it's a prophecy almost.
Okay, so it's a corollary of, it's a consequence of a statement. Yeah. So that works. That works. So, but generally speaking, v'ahavta is not the love that we just think of as, you know, the love between a man and a woman. We're talking here about all the things that you've all said, the awe of God, the fact that we want to give to God, even the fact that I love my wife because she makes nice food. I love God because he is good to me. It's a two-way street here.
Girl translated as you shall love Hashem.
You shall love. Okay,
yeah, it doesn't say if or and or anything.
Shall is a very useful word in English because it can mean imperative. You shall love Hashem. It can mean you must love Hashem, or it can just be a future tense. You shall love Hashem. So Shall is a very useful word when you want to actually fudge the thing and you don't actually know what you want to say. No,
You can't force somebody to love.
this is my question, Solly. How do you have a command to love? And the answer is that you are commanded to behave in a way that will bring you to love Hashem. That's the point.
What, stick in a carrot?
Yeah, in a way. Not sticking the carrots as such, but a consequence. It's a consequence. If you behave in a way that you, in other words, you fulfill the commandments of Hashem, because we'll come into in the next paragraph of Shema, we will see what happens to us if we keep the commandments. V'haya im shamoa tishma'u. If you will keep my commandments, what will happen? Let's just have a quick preview. If you will keep the commandments that I will command you, le'ahava et Hashem Elokechem, to love your God, ula ovdo, and to serve Him, etc. What will happen? V'natati matar artzachem. I'll give you rain in your land, ve'ito, in its right time. Carrot and stick.
But this is what, you're going to laugh when I'm going to say to you.
No, never.
But then you get, Johnny,
I find this is exactly what's happening here, and it's not happening to me, unfortunately, but it's happening to you.
Johnny,
I see that you're becoming more and more vested in your belief.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you noticed it. I hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu is listening to you.
Yes.
in the second paragraph, Johnny, after you get what, Johnny?
And
One sec, Johnny.
That's the difference between, I don't know, Catholicism, and you have to accept and believe.
No, it's really happening. It's really happening.
There are. Jeff has just said that the Jewish religion, one of the something which is particular to the Jewish religion is it's a doing religion. So we have to do things. We have 613 mitzvot that we have to do or not do. And Jeff says that through that, I'm laughing at what Hannah's written. I won't say it. And through that, through the doing, we come to live Hashem, and we come to love Hashem, and that's partly what Frank was saying, and it's what Solly was saying, and it's what Jeff is saying. So it's interesting, isn't it? You've all said the same sort of thing in different ways, but the bottom line is, you shall love Hashem, your God. And the beauty of it for me is that it can apply in all sorts of different ways to different people. Different people will come to love Hashem through different ways. Take the Nachmans, right? They come to love Hashem by music and by, and
orgies,
drugs and whatever. I don't know. Yeah. And then you've got the Litvaks that come and they love Hashem by being, miserable and learning the 25 hours a day, and right. And then completely different to the Nachmans, but they're both working towards the same aim, which is to love Hashem. One man's meat is another man's poison, and you've just got to find your way to loving Hashem. Another path. And that's why, for me, it's very important. We spoke about this in the very first week of the Pirkei Avot Shiur, when we said, Moshe Kibel Misinai. He received the Torah at Sinai. Remember, we talked about it had to be at Sinai for him. That was his place where he first met Hashem, was in the burning bush. So everybody has to have a Sinai. Everybody has to find their place and their method and their, those people that go out into the forests and spend hours contemplating and looking at nature and hugging trees and all that stuff, right? They find Hashem that way. Don't do it for me, right? But it does for them. Faye, for example, who I don't know if she's still with us, I think she might be. Faye finds her method through song, through music, and that's great. I'm completely non-musical, so it doesn't do it for me. I find through reading, through language. I love language, so I look at language and I see things there, and that's what does it for me. Everybody has a different path of v'ahavta, and that's why this paragraph is in the singular. V'ahavta, you personally do it your own way. Doesn't really matter as long as the goal is v'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. Having already, like Frank said, having already declared, no messing about, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We believe that. Now, how am I going to get to that point where I love Hashem? And it's horses for courses.
I was going to.
You over logic.
So Soli says you can't have everything by logic, and that's of course why we have what we had in last week's parsha. What was last week's parsha? The para aduma. That's exactly the reason why we have that chok, to teach us that there are certain things, Mr. Clever Clogs, whoever you think you are, that you don't know and you don't understand and you can't understand and you'll never understand, and that is a chok. So yeah, you can't always have logic, but for some people, their path towards loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu is this way, and for some, it's another way. And one of the most important things that we must not do is to try and force our way on other people. And that is to me, a big fault that many people and communities and sections of society do. And that is that they try and say, it's our way and every other way is not right. I don't accept that. There are many different ways of serving Hashem, and as long as we were all going towards in the right direction towards serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu and loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then how you do it, if it's through music, if it's through words, or it's through actions, or whatever it is.
I was going to say, I know what
framework. Yes, you've got to have a framework. No, but if by walking your dog in the fields and you say your prayers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu while you're in the fields and you're inspired to do that, then yes, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Okay, it goes without saying that Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, God is one, and we believe with complete faith that the Torah is min hashamayim. If you cross over that line where you don't believe that the Torah is min hashamayim, then you've crossed that red line. You can't, you're beyond the pale. That's it. You've lost the game. This is everything that I've said is predicated on the fact that you've said Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and that you believe that the Torah and the mitzvot come from Hashem. If you don't believe the Torah mitzvah is written by Hashem, if you believe,
the second paragraph,
as Philip said, that they were written by different people, then you've got a problem.
In the second paragraph, Johnny.
That's where Louis Jacobs made an error. I mean, many things that Louis Jacobs wrote were perfectly acceptable, perfectly reasonable, brilliantly argued, and then he went too far. And then he went and said, there is reason to believe, we don't have to believe that the Torah was min hashamayim. And once he'd said that, that was it. He put himself outside of mainstream Orthodox Judaism, which was a great shame, actually, a great shame.
Every time you ask something that nobody can listen, everything ends up minhag, because we've always done it.
Well, there's a Masorah, tradition. Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for tradition. I mean, what was it the other day we were talking about? Oh, in the halacha, I was talking about the source for the Haredim wearing black and white. There is a source for it. They interpret that source in a very strict way, but there is a source for it. It's not made up, and they're entitled to do that. Right? No, it's exactly that. It's exactly not fashion. That's why they do it, because it's not fashion. So we have to accept that the Masorah, the tradition handed down from one generation to another, is of great value. We've run out of time. All we've actually done is one word. We managed to do one word today, ve'ahavta. So, and yes,
Johnny, I think the ahavta, I think, as you said before, it's a very personal thing. I love saying it in the morning, and I know how I personally feel that going into it. But in the second paragraph of Shema, you find out what happens if you don't.
Okay, so we'll come to that in due course. But I wanted to point out the first person, the first paragraph is about you personally, in the singular, and therefore you individually, everybody as an individual has to find their path towards loving Hashem. When it comes to the second paragraph, Then, Jeff, we're talking about the framework. Then we're talking about a national framework, and it's much more rigid, if you like. But the first paragraph of Shema is not so rigid. Ve'ahavta, you find your own way. Of course, within a framework, like we've said, you can't cross red lines. But within a pretty broad framework, you find your own way. Maybe through music, maybe through nature, maybe through contemplation, meditation, or maybe through action, maybe through learning, maybe through words, maybe whatever it is that turns you on, whatever it is that inspires you. And that's why those of you that are watching this on the video, behind me, you can see what I called my organization, Tefilah, Inspiring Judaism. That's it, Yadut Shel Hashra'ah, Inspiring Judaism. Because if you're not inspired, it ain't going to go anywhere. So whatever it is that inspires you, that's what you've got to do. So that's the message of Ve'ahavta. Find your inspiration, your own inspiration. And maybe next week we'll get through a few more words.
Johnny, can I ask you one question?
Yes.
Sometimes I get to like the man Yebu you make, and I thought, because you say it, I've been saying it for so long, I say it off by heart sometimes. I thought, have I said the middle part of it? Can you go back and repeat it in the middle of the Shema?
And probably you should. We've all done that, John.
I know.
We've all done it driving, haven't we?
You've driven somewhere,
you've driven home, and you don't remember anything about the journey.
Yeah. Nothing
at all, because you do it by rote.
But are you allowed to say
problem. You say the Shema, and you get to Leman Yirbu, and you think, did I? Didn't I? Then you haven't said it right. Go back and say it again.
Yeah, you can say it again.
Yeah, you should say it again.
You should say it.
Because you have to say it with kavanah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone.
Tadarabah.
See you all next week.
Yeah. Praise God.
You see, you know what?
Good night.
I stay.